Oh, nice. Okay. Are we live?
Yes,
We are?
Yes, we are.
Welcome, everyone. I see that we are joined by a good, generous dozen of people or so, and I see people are joining in. I'm Bill Valerio, the director of Woodmere, and this is a community update, a landscape update in relation to Maguire Hall. We're gonna talk a little bit about the building, but mostly the landscape tonight and what the landscape plan is. I'm joined by my colleagues at Woodmere, here on the staff at Woodmere, with me, Veronica Farr, Bryce Long, and Ann Standish. And then joining me from Matthew Baird Architects is Paul Golis, immediately to my left, and Chow Yang from Andropogon, the landscape architect that's designing our landscape for us. So I'm very happy to be here tonight. We are recording this session because many people have said to us, oh, I'm very curious to see what's going on and I want to know more, but I have something I have to do on Monday night and I can't join the Zoom event. So we will post this presentation on Woodmere's website. So we are recording it for that reason. And also because we're recording it, we would ask that if you have questions, save them till the end, and we will be glad to answer all the questions to the best of our abilities. So with that, I think I'll jump in. I will run through the presentation. If I say anything that's incorrect, I've already asked Chow and Paul to chime in and make sure we get things right. And I look forward to it. What you're seeing here is a drone photograph, a drone that we actually bought at Target and used to take a picture of Woodmere's Charles Knox Smith Hall, the main building, the founding building of Woodmere, nestled in the beautiful green environment of Chestnut Hill. You can see Chestnut Hill College at the top of the slide. In the mid-ground on the right, you can see the Rose Garden at the Arboretum, Germantown Avenue running, on something of a diagonal along the left edge of the photograph. Charles Knox Smith, who founded Woodmere, whose photograph you see on the right, believed that art and God was a path, art and nature, excuse me, was a path to God. And so he founded his fine art museum in Chestnut Hill because he wanted the people of Philadelphia to have the experience of coming up Lincoln Drive on their horses when it was a gravel path and, arriving at the museum and being prepared by nature to give themselves over to the beauty that is art and that he found in art. So we've continued to interpret what it means to bring art and nature together for a spiritual experience, for the overall wellness of the human soul. That's what museums are about. And, the landscape is just so important to us. And the way that sculpture, especially outdoor sculpture, integrates with nature, that's what I'll be talking about a bit tonight. Next slide, please. We're talking about the landscape and we're talking about Francis M. Maguire Hall, the 17,000 square foot building that's about 75 steps away from Charles Knox Smith Hall, Woodmere's main building. Francis M. Maguire Hall sits on the top of the same Germantown Avenue ridge that Woodmere's main building and so many of the important buildings in Chestnut Hill sit on that same ridge atop the watershed. You see what it looked like that's a photograph that I took in April 2021 when I first visited the building and learned that the Sisters of St. Joseph's were planning to sell the building. And down below, an architect's rendering actually a rendering made by Paul right next to me of what we envision the completed building to be like, and our approach to the exterior and to the interior, but has been very much a preservation architecture approach. So we've restored the beautiful porch. I'll talk about that in a minute, but we're giving this building the TLC that it's been needing. Our vision for Maguire Hall is to create 14 galleries for Woodmere's collection. Woodmere has one of the great collections of American art, but most people don't know it because we don't have space to show it. And that's how Maguire Hall is such an incredible game changer for Woodmere as a fine art museum, as an art museum. But we're also all about education and education programs and building community on a platform of art. So there are spaces inside Maguire Hall that add capacity to our ability to do the sorts of programmings that bring people together. I talked already about architecture and historic preservation. Part of our vision was to restore the building, and we have. And finally, Woodmere's work on Maguire Hall is not only about the building, but it's about 4 acres of precious green space right at the center of Chestnut Hill. And that's primarily what I'll be talking about tonight. But it really is thrilling to be able to improve and bring this extraordinary estate from the 19th century back to life in such a dynamic way. And that's what I hope to be able to describe tonight. So next slide. The architectural principles that we're working with, you see Matthew Baird of Matthew Baird Architects, and one of the spectacular houses that he's built in Maine on Mount Desert Island, where he also has an office. Jose Almiñana, one of the principals at Andropogon, Chow's colleague, and you see there Storm King. Nobody does integration of sculpture and landscape better than Andropogon, who did all of that work for Storm King Sculpture Center in upstate New York. And Jeff Krieger, who is our architect on hand, who's doing a great deal of the construction oversight architecture, has done all the various communications and city approvals, which it takes a very special person to not, jump off the tower of Woodmere to be able to get all those city approvals done, and Jeff could do it. Jeff is, a wonderful friend and a wonderful member of our community, deeply involved in this project. Excuse me. More about people. Marie Louisa Trotter, who came from England to marry her husband, William, Trotter. I forget his middle name, Trotter. She's probably responsible and the driving voice behind the original construction of Maguire Hall in the 1850s. It was the summer retreat for the Trotter family. Alfred Craven Harrison is in the center there with the dramatic mustache. Alfred Craven Harrison, Sugar King of Philadelphia, bought the house in the 1890s when the Trotters were finished with it. And he expanded Maguire Hall, built an expansion that goes south and an expansion that goes east. And then on the right, my dear friend, trustee of Woodmere, somebody I miss terribly, Francis M. Maguire, a portrait by the artist Kassem Amoudi of Franny that we commissioned for the entrance hall of Maguire Hall. Franny, for whom her family and the Maguire Foundation made a lead gift to name the building for Franny, an artist herself, philanthropist, someone who cared deeply about art and education, and we're deeply inspired and honored to be doing all the work that we're doing in the spirit of Franny, who was a wonderful person in every way. Uh, Quick update on the building. You see it in the snow there, and it kind of looked prettier in the snow than in the mud. But it's so nice that things have warmed up. You can see that we've restored the porch, and so stripped off a whole lot of paint. That porch is the original Victorian porch from the 1850s. It was painted every 10 or 15 years, and so none of the crisp detail of those columns was visible under the miserable layers of paint that were there. It's going to be a very beautiful and welcoming space, the porch of Maguire Hall. It opens up the building. You can see how in the approach from Germantown Avenue there, you can see through the porch to the beautiful sunsets and the landscape to the north. And down below in the lower left, if you've driven by and seen a tent in front of the building, that tent has been there so that the people building our fountain for the front of the building have been able to work through the frigid temperatures of January and February this year. And just the next slide, I think, shows a little bit more about the fountain. You can see this is just a little bit of help from Photoshop, and I think the right proportion. It's close to the right proportion, a beautiful sculpture by the artist Harriet Frischmuth that we've had in the collection. She is a fountain sculptor. Harriet Frischmuth was one of the great sculptors of Gilded Age Philadelphia. We've always needed the right kind of fountain and placement for her, and here we go. She's going to rise like the birth of Venus off of this beautiful fountain surface, and water comes out from beneath her feet. There are little fish heads in that column base or whatever it is that she's standing on, and it'll bring the tranquility, of music there. Harriet Frischmuth studied in the studio of Rodin in Paris. He was her teacher, and I'm sure that Sweet Grapes, which is the title of Woodmere's piece, was inspired by Rodin's Eve, which you see there on the facade of the Rodin Museum on the Parkway. Similarly, a female figure, arms crossed, looking down and in something of a spiraling motion. But I think the Harriet Frischmuth is about just freedom and beauty and comfort with the human body, whereas of course Eve's pose is a pose of shame. So I love the fact that we can have a beautiful conversation between the sculpture at Woodmere and the sculpture on the Parkway by Rodin, student and teacher, woman and man. A really nice thing to be able to do in art history when you can make those kinds of relationships tangible. Next. A lot of the action at Maguire Hall is on the back of the building, and you can see we have the most elegant elevator shaft on this side of, or the most elegant elevator shaft that I know. It's a beautiful glass shaft. The elevator doors inside are also glass, so as you go up and down in the building, you'll be able to see out. We chose to build the elevator on the exterior of the building because to put that kind of a thing on the inside of the building would have destroyed the interiors completely. So that's really wonderful. And then you can see already the very dramatic cantilevered deck that will connect the north porch to the dining room and allow us to have events, flowing from front to back and circulating around the building. Off of the concrete retaining wall at the back of the building is another sculpture by the artist Ned Hoffman, a sculpture from the early 1950s. And the next slide. Oh, well, wait a minute. So interior, well, no, all good in terms of the changing of the slide. Wait a minute was to me. Here are more photographs of the elevator shaft up close. You can see how elegant the pattern of glass is. And then on the interior of the shaft, The elevator cab is in the process right now of actually being built. That inside of the shaft will be lined with some kind of some kind of a cement substance that will clean up the interior of that shaft will be visible, but you get a sense of how you'll be able to go up and down in the elevator shaft and, look out into the landscape, which I think will be very beautiful. Next. And this is where I thought we'd be going, a little bit more about the Ned Hoffman sculpture. There you see it together with the work of Walker Hancock, the 30th Street Station, most beautiful sculpture in Philadelphia, maybe, or certainly one of the most famous sculptures in Philadelphia by Walker Hancock, the memorial to the fallen soldiers of the Pennsylvania Railroad of World War II. Walker Hancock was Ned Hoffman's teacher, and Ned Hoffman's figure, reaching up to the heavens is very much the child of the 30th Street Station figure. So again, another really wonderful conversation that we're able to make between Chestnut Hill and downtown Philadelphia through the art. Next slide. Now we'll dive into the landscape. The Otto Haas Family Trust has made a very generous gift to name the grounds at Maguire Hall. And together with the Haas family, Woodmere is excited to be installing some very beautiful sculptures that we have in the collection that have needed a home for a long time. So, our first thoughts as an art museum is, aha, we have 4 new acres. That's a lot of sculptures can find their new home. So we're excited about that. Next slide. You may have noticed already that on the rocks, the monumental geometric sculpture by the artist Robin Friedenthal is in place. It looks like it was designed for that very site. Some of you may know that it came to us from Pennsauken, New Jersey, where it was commissioned by Roger Wilco of Roger Wilco Discount Liquors. And it needed a new home when the liquor store expanded, and Woodmere was, deeply honored to receive it. You can see that it's an amazing sculpture from the way it changes as you walk around it. So you see it here in 2 views there at the corner of Hampton and Sunset. On one side, it looks like one shape. From the opposite side, it looks like a completely different animal. And that's something that I think is very, important. That is one of the most important qualities of sculpture. It takes up space. And so you want it to be interesting as you evolve around it and experience it in 365 degrees. And this is a sculpture that sort of shape shifts before your eyes as you're walking. And it does have a magical kind of geometry. It's all based on the module of that triangle that you see in at the lower base. That triangle repeats, it flips on itself, it creates parallelograms to create the shapes of the sculpture. And I think part of what makes it such a mesmerizing work of art, at least for me, is that your mind senses the geometry and you have no choice but to try to kind of figure out how that geometry works. Robin Friedenthal, the artist of On the Rocks, is also the artist of Whitewater, the sculpture on the corner of Bells Mills and Germantown Avenue, the stainless steel arch-shaped sculpture. And we really love the idea that the 2 properties that now form Woodmere are anchored at their corners by these monumental sculptures by Robin Friedenthal. In the left, you see purple lovegrass, a pioneer species. And I know everything I know about purple lovegrass from Chow. And Chow has designed beautiful garden beds around each of our sculptures to help sit them in the landscape, to create a beautiful park-like atmosphere. And you can see the rendering on the lower right with on the rocks just slightly off to the left of the kind of park-like atmosphere and pathway that will encircle our building. I learned from Chow that purple lovegrass is a native species of grass that's known as a pioneer species. And I said, pioneer in what way? These are grasses or certain type, these are plants that are pioneers in the sense is that they are the first stage in the building of soil. So, if you think of this site as having been badly depleted, it was never really cared for as a landscape, for maybe 100 years, to bring in the kinds of plant life that, from year in and year out, cycle in, cycle out, the purple lovegrass cuttings will go into the soil and enrich it. And, we have how many purple love grasses across?
We have about 500 at least.
So 500 purple love grass plants that will bloom purple all through August and September.
Yes, yes.
And, again, we're a museum, and so in our conversations about the landscape, we wanted color. And so color will be abundantly present across the landscape that Chow and his colleagues at Andropogon have designed for us. Next, please. And, in terms of color, the landscape is designed for color all through the seasons. Winter, spring, summer, and fall will all be beautiful at Maguire Hall, and the palette of plants are all local plants. That is, we've learned, and like the pollinator gardens that we have at Woodmere, these are all native species that pollinate or are pollinators for the good insects and microorganisms, the birds and the creatures that we share the environment with and that we want to help sustain. So, it's a landscape, it will be a landscape of all local plants, trees and shrubs, and it's designed to be interesting from a color point of view all through the year. Next slide. Here's another example, I think, of a really exciting garden that Chow and the Andropogon team have designed for the space around Steve Tobin's sculpture Syntax, a giant ball of letters. And you can see there's a mown path surrounded by 3 different species of grasses that will respond in their forms so beautifully to the sculpture itself and create an environment for it, but also create, an interesting coloristic environment around the sculpture as the seasons change from spring to summer. And you can see that the 3 species of grass in this kind of environment that's created for Syntax are purple lovegrass, which I've talked about already, prairie dropseed, and switchgrass. Next. I also think that a tour de force landscape kind of concept and garden concept of interacting with sculpture is something that the Andropogon team designed for our sculpture Praha by the artist Steve Tobin. And you can see that, again, their thoughts were all about about color with this most dramatic and theatrical of sculptures that will be at Maguire Hall. And in the springtime, there will be beautiful pink red buds to the right and to the left of it. And then I think really beautiful in the fall, and especially in the winter, this kind of blanket or this meandering blanket of red twig dogwood shrubs that create this beautiful dancing kind of red environment coming right up to the Steve Tobin Praha. Next. If you know Woodmere's programs, you know that we work with the Lenape Nation of Pennsylvania as much as we possibly can. We just had a terrific program with them on Saturday. That was really wonderful. But much of our programming, and again, in partnership with the Morris Arboretum, we have also integrated plants, local plants that are particularly important to the Lenape into the landscape. And you see the Lenape cookbook in the center there. We will grow chokeberries because chokeberries are, a Lenape delicacy. I have been served chokeberry pie, and I guarantee it's actually very delicious, unique kind of a berry taste. We will have pawpaw fruits, as you see. We want to be able to create a foraging experience. The Lenape planted certain things, but a great deal of their diet came from foraging. And so we want to be able to work in our education programs for adults and children. What does it mean to forage, and what can you forage for in the spring, in the summer, in the fall, and even in the winter. So we're very excited about the partnership with Lenape. We recognize the Lenape Nation as the people who lived here before we did, and we love the idea of the landscape being able to recognize that and to be able to teach this forward. You see an image of gourds. I asked my friends at the Lenape Nation, like, did they make clay ceramics? Did they make clay bowls? And they said, no, we used gourds historically. And we said, aha, there are a million great things that you can do with kids and gourds. So we're going to have a gourd garden, or we're going to try and to grow gourds and do art projects with gourds together with our friends at the Lenape. Next. A foundational element of the 4 acres are some very magnificent estate trees, some of which date to the 19th century. On the right is an English beech that, from its age, that's estimated by our friends, the arborists, the Morris Arboretum, probably dates to the times of Maria Louisa Trotter at the house, who was English. And could she have wanted an English beech as opposed to an American beech because it reminded her of trees that she knew at home in England? Maybe, we don't know. But it is an absolutely magnificent specimen of a beech tree. And, we will be stewarding it and taking care of it as we move into the future. To the left, you see a stand of these very beautiful white pines. And, we're used to white pines growing kind of scruffy in the woods or at the edge of the woods. These are 3 white pines that were planted on the property by my dear friend, Paul Maguire, and I'm sure friend to a lot of you. Paul planted these white pines together with the Sisters of St. Joseph, and I promised him we would be taking care of these white pines. So although we don't, maybe think of white pines as estate trees at Maguire Hall, they, have this somewhat sacred, they're very beautiful trees. They've got the right amount of space and light around them to grow very beautifully. They're among the most beautiful white pines that I know. And I feel a sacred responsibility to care for them for Paul. So, we count 10 important estate trees on the property, including the ones that you see on the screen, but several more. Next slide. And we are getting ready to plant 115 new trees. And so I just described 10 estate trees that need to be stewarded. We have 115 new trees that are coming in. These are canopy trees, understory trees, and evergreen trees. 346 shrubs and 6,000 perennials that are about to be planted all this spring across the site. Next. And this is not imaginary. This is pictures of Peter from Think Green and Chow tagging trees for the site. And you can see, I think in the center is an oak of some kind. There's a wonderful range of beautiful oaks that are to be planted. That looks like a white pine to me on the right. I'm not sure what Peter's standing with on the left. But the trees are tagged and purchased and waiting to be transported to the site. So that work is imminent, imminent, intimate, and blah. I'm showing you a copy of Chow's tree plan and a particularly beautiful specimen, eastern red cedar. The red cedar is one of the evergreens that, will appear throughout the landscape. That kind of reddish purple dot that you see is an important view shed in the landscape from the north porch, looking north towards Hampton Road. And we have sculptures to the right and to the left. And normally I would want to put a sculpture at an important and prominent view shed like that. But with the sculptures to the right and left, I thought it would be wrong and it would be competing. So we decided that we would put a beautiful specimen tree there, and also a tree that could become our annual holiday tree. Because again, we're gonna have a children's art studio in the building, and there's nothing more fun than Victorian card making, Victorian ornament making, and all of that kind of stuff. And so we'll be decorating the tree and having a good time with it, but it'll be, the red cedar is a gorgeous tree. And, you can see the size of it from, I think, Chow standing, just, to the right of it, in that photograph. So we'll be starting out with a very beautiful tree. Next. The periphery of the property outside of the hedge along Hampton, Green Tree, and Sunset. There are 15 trees, new trees that are to be planted around that periphery. I think of that 15, about half of them are yellow woods. And I live in West Philly, some of you know, near Clark Park, where there's a beautiful grove of yellow woods. And I can tell you when they bloom, it's very fragrant and very exciting. Yellow woods are great pollinator trees. I mean, you almost want to lick the flowers yourself. They're so honey-like, and certainly they just buzz with the energy of the beneficial insects. There will also be white oaks planted around the periphery, and I think we all know that white oaks are sort of the king of the oak trees, the biggest ones that there are. Absolutely magnificent trees, maybe my favorite tree of all time. So, of course, we wanted to have some beautiful white oaks, not only on the periphery of the property, but there are some being planted inside the property. There will also be beautiful dogwoods, so planted around the periphery again. Next slide. As buffers and building a dense forest-like atmosphere along Sunset and that portion of Green Tree where there are parking surfaces on the sort of inside of the property. Chow and his colleagues at Anthropogon have designed winter gardens, and these will be densely planted areas designed with biodiversity in mind, pollinator forward, sustaining of birds through the winter. We've seen it here on our Charles Knox Smith Hall that the winter berries that we have are greatly appreciated by the birds, through the winters. And this is a lot of the thinking behind the plant selections in the winter gardens. There will be things that flower in the summer and are beautiful to look at in the winter, and a lot of the foraging and plants that are specifically useful for weaving or paper making will also be integrated into the winter gardens. And here you see a slide that Chow put together for me that describes many of the beautiful plants and perennial shrubs, understory trees, canopy trees, that are integrated into the design of the winter gardens. Next. And then a really important part of Maguire Hall is the giant rain garden that you'll see as you drive in the main driveway. Off to the right a little bit will be a giant tank of a rain garden. This will collect water from across the property, contain it, and through various levels of different grades of retentive materials, different grades of stones and so forth that are designed to pull water down into the earth, we will control the water that falls on our property. And the rain garden will be heavily planted up above. I know that Chow has come up with a design of sweet gum trees. These are non-fruiting sweet gum trees. I actually like the fruits of the sweet gum trees, but I know nobody else does. But you can see just an example of a sweet gum tree on the left there and how it, erupts into flames in the fall. I mean, metaphorically, but again, it's one of the most beautiful fall foliage trees that we all know. And again, a very important and effective pollinator plant in our ecosystem. So the rain garden is an important part of our landscape. And I think there's an example of a rain garden, one that's bigger than ours, that Andrew Pogon built for the University of Pennsylvania at the Palestra up on the upper right. Next slide. And then the parking surface is also an important conservation element. The parking surface is built with the necessary combination of permeable and porous asphalt surfacing. The porous surfacing, again, pulls water down into the earth. It's soft. It can't be used as the main driving pathway because it would not sustain the weight of, say, a school bus or a delivery truck or anything like that, or even a very heavy SUV maybe. But well, I don't really know about that. But at any rate, the parking surface will not be a big expanse of parking. There will be various pods for the parking. And the photograph that you see on the top of this slide, there are pods for parking and then these outcropping shapes that are specifically designed for trees. And one of the designs that Andrew Pogon came up with is that there are, about 8 or 9 Princeton American elms that are to be planted to create something of a directional alley as you traverse this this parking surface. Princeton American elm, as far as I understand it, is an engineered elm that's resistant to Dutch elm disease, which wiped out most of the elm trees that existed in our region. We do have a beautiful elm tree. You can see it, actually, the silhouette of it in the top slide closest to the building. I mean, there's no tree that has a more beautiful vase shape than an elm tree. And if we go to the next slide, you can see just a little bit of eye candy, a gorgeous alley of beautiful Princeton elms, creating that sort of magical glow in the fall of, the yellow color that they turn. So we're looking forward to creating our own little version in our parking area. As at the lowest part of the property is a gigantic infiltration bed. Again, this is very much like the rain garden, but I mean, it's like the size of a very large swimming pool. But again, this is an underground tank filled with retentive materials that is designed to suck water back down into the earth. It also connects into the city's storm sewer system. The idea is not to put water into the city's storm sewer system because, again, as good citizens, we all know that the city's storm sewer system was built in the 19th century. It doesn't have near the capacity that's needed for the population of people that live in Philadelphia today. So the objective is to capture all of the water that falls on our site, on every roof, on every impermeable surface. If it doesn't get absorbed into the ground before it gets to the lowest part of our property, it will go into the infiltration bed. If the infiltration bed gets too full, there is an outlet into the city's storm sewer system. It would take a spectacularly dramatic amount of water to get to the point where we are putting water into the city's storm sewer system. So, you know, if that kind of dramatic thing were to happen, you know, we might have bigger issues. But at any rate, you know, conservation and working around these major engineered parts of the landscape have been a big consideration in how we have designed the landscape at Maguire Hall. Near to the infiltration bed, just beyond it, you can see there's a beautiful Colorado spruce, again, an evergreen tree that it's a beautifully colored tree. A bunch of people have said to me, "Oh my God, that's my favorite tree on the property," and it is a beautiful tree. It has this funny shape with kind of these twin trunks. And I just wanted to show that the Colorado spruce will be cushioned, and you know, right now it kind of stands alone, and it's kind of seemed kind of naked to me for a long time, but it'll be integrated beautifully into into the winter garden that's going to be created around it. So we'll, you know, the Colorado spruce is one of the estate trees on the property, and it's a very pretty one. So I do have a sales pitch here, and something that, you know, we're hoping members of the community might be interested in participating in and helping us out. Costs a lot of money to buy all these trees, and as a not-for-profit charitable organization, we have to raise every penny for everything that we ever want to do. So we've created a program called Adopt the Landscape. And, you know, with recognition on beautiful signage throughout the landscape, we would love people to say, adopt a canopy tree, or an evergreen, or an understory tree, or a cluster of shrubs, or a bed of perennials. And you can see the numbers: 53 new canopy trees, 35 new evergreens, 27 new understory trees, 346 new shrubs, and 6,000 perennials. It's a lot of planting. Next. And just to give a little, even more specificity on our 53 new canopy trees: willow oaks, Princeton American elms, round lobe sweetgums, yellowwoods, white oaks, tulip poplars, dogwoods, scarlet oaks, and black gums. Next. Evergreen, you know, the evergreen palettes are American holly, eastern red cedar, magnolias, and white pines. Understory trees: pawpaws, serviceberry, hornbeam, redbud, dogwood, and witch hazel. And the estate trees. We are also offering opportunities, if you love the big, beautiful estate trees. Each and every one of them needs professional arborists' attention on an annual basis. And, you know, we are offering, next slide, that, oh, we'll go back, that again, if you would rather, you know, put your name on an initiative to preserve the great historic trees on the property, we would love to see that happen. Now the next slide. Of the new shrubs: chokeberry, inkberry, winterberry, bayberry, hydrangea, cherry laurel, spicebush, ninebark bayberry, fragrant sumac, redwood dogwood, and many, many more. You see some of the images of what some of these plants look like. And again, the perennials are designed for their, local embeddedness in the ecosystem and their pollinating capabilities. We hope to have beautiful butterflies, as many as we can. Next. And then, if you'd like to really be an angel, a member of our community has made a very substantial endowment gift to endow the care of the landscape at Maguire Hall, in memory of Virginia and Joseph Wilmson, who lived in Chestnut Hill, cared very deeply for the beauty of the green environment of this community. And, if you're in a position to be more generous than to adopt an estate tree or an understory tree or a bed of perennials, and might be in a position to make a gift to the Wilmson Fund. We would really love that. And we foresee that we'll be hosting an annual party every year to raise money for the Wilmson Fund, which will fund the upkeep and care of, all the beautiful trees, existing and new, that will be at Maguire Hall. And just to give a sense of the kind of donor recognition that we do in our landscape, you might have seen these boulders here at Woodmere's main site, but we'll probably have something similar to this kind of language that 115 new trees were planted in 2025 through the generosity of the following friends: canopy trees, evergreen trees, understory trees, et cetera, et cetera. That's what I have to say about the landscape. I thought I would bring us back to the building a little bit. This is a rendering again of the beautiful front plaza designed by our friends at Andropogon. But as you go into the building, next slide, you can see that the galleries are shaping up. There's a rendering on the right of the main entrance hall, and on the left, what it looked like just today. I was in the building and took that photograph. So you can see the walls are being painted, floors are being sanded and refinished. We'll soon be installing light fixtures. Next slide. This is a view of the children's art studio, formerly the kitchen of the space. You can see that it's sheetrock board has gone up, it's been taped, and it's going to be a beautiful light-filled space in which children will be making art. I'm very excited about having a children's art studio that's specifically designed for kids. Two galleries, Gallery 1 and Gallery 2, we call them on the left, the Ned Putnam Gallery, named in honor of our friend and former trustee, the late Ned Putnam, a beautiful gallery dedicated to contemporary art. On the right, another gallery to be dedicated to contemporary art, Francis and Robert Kohler Gallery, named, and these kinds of namings provide the funds, that we need to actually do this renovation work. So we're very grateful to our donors and supporters for every gift, but beautiful galleries of contemporary art. And I want to describe that. And, I've given other presentations where I have talked about the plan for the art in the building, but we're planning to use these main floor galleries with the highest ceilings in the building for contemporary art, where you really need that kind of height. But we also imagine that these galleries, which we want to be very important to the living artists of the city of Philadelphia, this is a dedicated place that the artists of our city can feel a real sense of ownership of. And as you walk up and through the building, the galleries will go back in time. So it'll be something of a reverse chronological experience as you explore the building, going up to, the 20th century in, the galleries on the 2 floors up above and the floors down below. Next. And just, a few minutes on contemporary art in Philadelphia, some notable and important and wonderful works of art in Woodmere's collection by artists like D.D.A. William and Barbara Chase Rabeau, Henry Bermudez. We think of contemporary art as a dialogue between artists in our city, some of whom, like Ann Minnick, whose Bone Boat you see below, whose family has lived in Philadelphia for generations and generations, and artists who've come or whose families or who themselves have come to Philadelphia more recently. And, contemporary art is absolutely an international dialogue. If you're looking at contemporary art at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, you will experience, works of art that have come to Philadelphia from around the world. And at Woodmere, we think of contemporary art as a dialogue of artists who bring perspectives from around the world and are engaging with each other and, with people who have, lived in Philadelphia or whose families have lived here for generations and generations. And it's out of that the spirit of contemporary art grows, in our view, in our city. So I'm incredibly excited about these beautiful galleries dedicated to contemporary art. Next slide. We on the staff are very busy sprucing up our frames and getting paintings into conservation that we've just not been able to do before. So you can just see a very dramatic transformation in these 2 slides, for example. An important painting by Arthur B. Carles, Mademoiselle de C. This is his first wife. I'm forgetting her name. Her last name is de Cordoba. That's the de C. But you can see on the left, it almost looks like there's a gray film over the entire painting. And then out of the studio of our friend, painting conservator Stephen Arasati, wow, how much more vibrant that painting is. So we're busy getting this work done. And just as we have an Adopt the Landscape program, we are very thrilled to have an Adopt the Art program, which has been going on now, actually for quite some time. We launched this at our fall gala. And, I just thought it worth mentioning that if to name a tree might not be your thing, but you really love art, on our website, in the same place where you can find the document to adopt the landscape and adopt a tree, you can also adopt the art. Next slide. Oh, and I thought we were gonna have a QR code here that people could photograph.
It's at the end.
Oh, well, let's go to that. So to adopt the landscape, the call to action, and I think you can use this same QR code, photograph it, and you can get to the Adopt the Art document. But again, everything, much of what I just said is available in this document online. And, we do hope that you'll be inspired. We are creating the most beautiful landscape that we know how to create. We believe it will be a community enhancement that's very exciting. And, we are incredibly grateful for all the community support that's gotten us to this point. So, with this, it's been almost an hour. Let's open it up for questions. I don't know if people have put questions into the chat, or I'm very happy if people want to raise their hands, or if that's a possibility, I don't know, to ask questions.
I have 2.
Okay.
I have 3. Okay. So please, the trees, shrubs, and perennials will be native species. It's an ambitious plan. What provisions will be incorporated to prevent/limit deer browse and damage? And what about watering? Last summer was hot and dry, and we are still short on water.
So an irrigation system is being installed, so there will be an irrigation system throughout the landscape. So that's how we will water it. And deer. We will protect the trees when they're young. We'll have those little wrapping things around the barks so that the deer don't kill them before they're established. But as at Woodmere's main site, I mean, we unfortunately do our best to just survive and, live with the deer. We are not building a fence around the property, so, the deer, the deer will come, and it might be that there's a beautiful bed of flowers that just gets mowed down from time to time.
Yeah, they will do.
That, I mean,
Yeah.
that may happen, but we managed to do okay. I mean, we do get deer losses, I mean, we do, but we don't, yeah.
There are measures like deer repellents that we can apply to those plants. But that's part of the maintenance effort as well.
Another question, will there be a perennial shade garden?
So there won't be a shade garden per se, but we have more than 20 different kind of perennials species that tolerant from full sun to par shade, full shade. And depends on where those plants located. They gonna have different characters and tolerant to shade or full suns.
There are shady parts of the property and there are sunny parts of the property,
Yes.
so.
Yes.
Another question. Thank you, Bill. The plans are amazing. I know that the Sisters of St. Joseph and the Norwood Fonbon community are honored to have been stewards of this magnificent property for a century and are so happy to see the home and property honored and the sensitivity to the environment and its history. Do you expect planting to begin this spring?
Yes, I mean, it's, when does it start?
Well, we just tagged those trees last week and we're gonna continue to tag those trees this week. We plan to procure majority of the plants in the next month or so, and the planting will start late spring or early summer.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's it for questions.
Are people using the chat to ask questions?
Yes.
Well, thank you.
I guess we will,
Oh, I have one more.
okay,
Philly has a free rain barrel program. Would you like to get that information?
is this through HSP? Oh, please, by all means,
Yes.
share the information, yes.
Yes.
I know of the rain barrel program at HSP.
I know, you guys, HS business.
Oh, PHS, yes. But please, by all means, share. We have some, rain barrels here. At Charles Knox Smith Hall, and we love to know what all of the resources that are available to us are. So thank you.
I think that's everyone.
Well, with that, and unless a question, is there a hand raised?
There's a fifth question on the plate,
A what?
the chat.
Oh, yes. Thank you for the terrific plans. Love all the native plants and designs. Very exciting, especially the Princeton elms. Lots of exclamation points. Yeah.
I think the Princeton elms are very exciting, and this was something that Chow brought as a suggestion for really animating that, experience of the space where the parking will be. And I think it'll be just very gorgeous. And there's nothing more beautiful than the way, those elm trees arch overhead, so.
Yeah, especially its upper branch, the branch are much higher than any other tree, so it's one of the best tree to be used in the parking lot. And it's tolerant for drought, for salt, so that's why we selected as the tree for parking.
Nice.
Unless there's anything else, please. If you're in a position to help us with a tree, we're incredibly grateful. And, we really do look forward to having the construction behind us and the enjoyment of the landscape, for all of us to share. So with that, thank you so much, and, see you soon. Be well.